Welcome to African Today, the voice of a changing continent. We bring you the stories shaping Africa's present and future, from breaking news and bold analysis to culture, innovation, and voices on the ground. We're here to inform, inspire, and amplify the heartbeat of Africa every single day. Thank you for stopping by the channel. We hope you enjoy our video. Let's begin. Africa, breaking the shackles of white supremacy and colonialism, a new dawn of liberation and empowerment. For centuries, Africa endured the brutal grip of white supremacy and colonial domination, systems that devastated its societies, plundered its resources, and warped its global image. But today, a powerful transformation is sweeping across the continent. Africa is slowly but surely breaking the shackles of white supremacy and colonialism. Not just politically or economically, but psychologically and spiritually. This new dawn is driven by a fierce resurgence of Pan-Africanism, cultural pride, political independence, and economic reawakening. A legacy of exploitation and dehumanization. Africa's encounter with colonialism was never benign. European powers carved up the continent in the infamous 1884 Berlin Conference, drawing arbitrary borders and pitting tribes against one another. The goal was not development, but domination. Millions of Africans were enslaved, murdered, or displaced. Entire cultures were erased or diminished, and resources were extracted to enrich colonial powers. White supremacy, the belief in the inherent superiority of white people, became the ideological tool that justified these atrocities. It relegated African civilizations to primitive status and painted the continent as a backward land in need of civilizing. This poisoned narrative infiltrated education systems, media portrayals, and even religious doctrine. Post-independence disillusionment. Between the 1950s and 1970s, a wave of independence movements swept across Africa. While flags were changed and colonial administrators were replaced with native leaders, the deep-rooted systems of control, economic dependency, foreign influence, and mental colonialism remained intact. Former colonizers continued to manipulate African economies through unfair trade agreements, puppet leaders, and international institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Many African countries became debt-ridden and politically unstable, with leaders forced to serve foreign interests in exchange for aid or survival. The liberation was often symbolic, not structural. The psychological effects of colonialism, self-hate, inferiority complexes, and Western worship lingered in the minds of many Africans. The rebirth of African consciousness. In recent years, however, a dramatic shift is underway. Across the continent and diaspora, there is a powerful cultural and ideological reawakening. African youth, scholars, artists, and leaders are boldly reclaiming their history, reasserting their identity, and demanding a break from neo-colonial structures. One, Pan-Africanism and unity. The dream of Pan-Africanism, a united, self-reliant Africa, is being revived. Leaders like Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traoré have reignited hopes for sovereignty and resistance to foreign domination. The call for a united African military, shared currency, and borderless trade reflects a deeper desire for self-determination and continental strength. Organizations like the African Union, ECOWAS, and SAE are evolving not just as diplomatic bodies, but as vehicles for African solutions to African problems. A younger generation of Africans no longer seeks validation from the West. They are building coalitions among themselves. 2. Economic liberation and resource control. A crucial element of breaking the colonial legacy is reclaiming control over Africa's vast natural wealth. Countries like Tanzania, Ghana, and Namibia are renegotiating mining contracts and challenging foreign monopolies. There's growing resistance to Western corporations exploiting African land, labor, and minerals without fair compensation. Moreover, the rise of African fintech startups, agriculture revolutions, and technological hubs like Nigeria's Silicon Lagoon are reducing dependency on Western economic models. Africans are inventing their own solutions, investing in intra-African trade, and building new paths to prosperity. 3. Cultural renaissance. Culture is at the heart of this resistance. From Afrobeat to Afrofuturism, African voices are reshaping global narratives. The popularity of African fashion, music, literature, and cinema, especially through platforms like Netflix, YouTube, and TikTok, has given African creators unprecedented reach. Movements to decolonize education, museums, and language are growing. African students are rejecting Eurocentric curriculums in favor of indigenous knowledge systems and African philosophy. Calls to return stolen African artifacts from European museums are finally being heard, and African languages are being promoted and protected. 4. Rejecting Western hypocrisy. More Africans are beginning to see through the double standards of Western foreign policy. Countries like France and the U.S. are increasingly viewed as destabilizing forces, cloaked in the language of democracy and human rights, but acting in self-interest. The recent expulsion of French troops and ambassadors from countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso is symbolic of this broader rejection. Many African governments and citizens are now seeking alliances with non-Western powers like China, Russia, and BRICS nations, not as saviors, but as partners who offer alternatives to Western hegemony. 5. Mental liberation. Perhaps the most revolutionary development is the psychological shift. African people are unlearning colonial lies. They are embracing their melanin, their hair, their ancestral spirituality, and their unique worldviews. The inferiority complex imposed by centuries of white supremacy is giving way to a profound pride in African heritage and potential. Books like Decolonizing the Mind by Ngugi wa Thiong'o and movements like African Spirituality Revival are liberating minds from Eurocentric thought patterns. This mental decolonization is the foundation upon which all other forms of liberation must be built. The road ahead, challenges and opportunities. Africa's journey to full liberation is not without obstacles. Corruption, poor governance, tribalism, and foreign interference still threaten progress. But unlike in previous generations, there is a growing refusal to submit to defeatism. The youth are restless, organized, and global. They are connected by technology, driven by purpose, and determined to shape their destiny. The task ahead is monumental: to dismantle colonial remnants in governance, education, religion, and economics. But it is no longer a dream. It is a movement. Conclusion: a rising continent no longer bound. Africa is rising, not in the way the West frames it, as a charity case or market to exploit, but as a continent reclaiming its voice, its values, and its vision. It is breaking free from the shackles of white supremacy and colonialism with defiance and dignity. This rebirth is not about revenge or resentment. It's about restoration, renewal, and radical self-love. The world must now reckon with an Africa that knows its worth, defends its rights, and demands its rightful place in history, not as a footnote, but as a foundation of global civilization. The chains are breaking, and the roar of a liberated Africa is being heard across the world. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to help grow the channel. Until next time, see you soon.